sitting in my parents' yard, visiting from LA. We have a wedding to go to this weekend. Actually, it's tonight. It's like 10 a.m. hanging out with, where is he? My buddy Murph. He's chewing on my pants. First time he really gets to hang out in a yard. In LA, we don't have too many yards. Well, most of us live in apartments. Those fortunate enough to live in a house, you know, they get the luxury of a yard. Out here in Central Valley, California, everybody has a yard. It's the opposite. Very few people live in apartments. Everybody else lives in a house, whether they own or rent. So for us in LA, this is a luxury. Some people might think that all the luxuries are in LA because we live, you know, in places like Beverly Hills and Hollywood and Burbank. But when you come back home, I don't want to say the middle of nowhere, but, you know, Central Valley, Northern California, it's quiet out here. Behind this fence is a house, but beyond these, like, next, like, 6-7 houses, there's these orchards, almond orchards, and they just chopped down all the trees, I just noticed, and they're replanting new ones. So for all of you that don't drink, they drink non-dairy milk, like almond milk, places like this in California, like Modesto, in Turlock and Central Valley, out here, there's a lot of agriculture. And this is where they have almond farms. I actually worked for a company like 2 miles from here that they built farming equipment, and they specialized in almond equipment, I guess, if that makes sense. Equipment to harvest almonds. Shakers that shake the trees, the big machines that hug these trees and shake them. All the almonds fall down. Have machines that pick them up, separate them. So, yeah, being out here, it makes me, you know, being back home. Sometimes you feel like you escape. You go to LA, or you go to the Bay Area, San Francisco, wherever you go to school, wherever you live, and it's not home. When you come home, everything's very foreign, but also things kind of never change. The roles in your family always seem to be the same, no matter how many years have gone by. Yeah, everybody in your family has a role. So, one thing that makes me remember being back home is like childhood movies. I didn't grow up with the like family vacation movies, even though my Annie did. Annie's my fiance, for those of you that don't know. I'll be mentioning her a lot. She's my movie date, my movie buddy. She's my forever movie date. Her and I discuss movies a lot, but she grew up with like family vacation. I did not. And I can see like why, like seeing them now as an adult. I've only seen part 1. I haven't seen the other ones yet. Like I said, I didn't grow up with them, but watching them, I get why a lot of people related to them, you know. Chevy Chase is a really big guy, you know. He when you looked at him, he looked like a dad. He looked like a guy that could fix something. He can build a few things. He can take out a couple guys if he had to. He's a tough looking dude, man. So I can see why people relate, you know. He looks like America's dad. Also, you know, people probably going across country, or even from here to LA. LA's 5 hours. LA means Disneyland to people out here. That's how they refer to LA. They don't look at it like the movie industry. To them, it's Disneyland, which to us, you know, it's a big part of the industry, but it's Disneyland. It's the theme park, and family vacation. They are going cross country. I don't know exactly what state, what city, but they're traveling to a theme park. Again, I don't remember. I don't know it. But along the way, things happen on the road trip, and finally they get there, and I believe it's closed, and the dad demands, he's like, dude, I traveled all this way, went through all this stuff, my car got, messed up. He went through hell alone let alone, the cost. But they all traveled in a car, staying in motels for days to get to this theme park, and it's closed. So as a dad, as a parent, you understand, like, dude, I'm getting in. And that's what's kind of cool about the dad. Like, he's the only guy that gets them to open the park, or they get to ride rides while it's closed. That's pretty cool. But like I said, I didn't grow up with those movies. I grew up with films like Back to the Future. And I know I'm rambling, but I am getting to a point. The point that I'm making is that Family Vacation, some people related to it for some reason. I never did. I didn't watch them. If I saw them on TV, I skipped. Like I said, movies like Back to the Future were the movies I liked. And sometimes I think that we gravitate towards the movies that we gravitate towards because of what they mean to us or what we find relatable. And for me, what was very relatable to Back to the Future was that this kid, Marty, could go back and repair his family. Like, even in the first one, it wasn't intentional, but he ends up going back to the future because originally it's Doc. But, the Libyans come, they shoot Doc, and Marty's the one that gets in the DeLorean and goes back in time. And he undoes his parents' marriage, and he has to repair it. He has to bring them back together, because if not, he'll never exist and all that. But he doesn't just put them back together. He fixes a few things because he knows he's in the future, and he knows what his parents end up becoming. He knows what ends up being of his family. So he makes some changes to where, his dad's not such a coward. That actually happened by chance. He tells him to go easy on them. When they have a kid that sets the living room rug on fire. Those are things that I could relate to as a kid. For me, I have siblings, but all my siblings are 11, 12, and 13 years older than me, in that order. So I have a big age gap. So for me, it's kind of like I didn't grow up with siblings, even though I had them. By the time I was, like 4 or 5, my siblings had moved out. They were young adults. They were 18, 19, 20. So there's a lot of things in my family dynamic that I just couldn't understand. My brothers and sisters, not that they were best friends or would hang out, but they could do stuff, and I couldn't. I was little. And sometimes during family get-togethers, or they would sit around the table and talk about cousins and family members, and I didn't know who they were because I'd never met them, because I'm a baby. When they've known these people since they were kids, they grew up with them, they went to elementary school with some of their cousins, and we ended up moving. My family moved, so I was born and raised in this small little town where they came from, the Bay Area. A lot of family members out there, a lot of aunts, uncles, cousins, and they grew up with them. So when I was born and we moved to this small little town, I didn't grow up with those cousins like they did. So when they would reminisce, I could never relate. So I always wished that I was, 10 years younger, or 10 years older, sorry. I always wish that I was 10 years older. If I was 11, I wish I was 21, because I'd be closer to my siblings' age, and I could relate to them, and, hang out with them and grow up with them. Those were like my family dynamics, and I think that's one reason why I gravitated towards Back to the Future, was because Marty could go back in time. Marty could go forward. He could go into the future. So I always thought that was really cool. I think as a kid, I just thought it was cool that he could get in a car and go into the future. hitting 88 miles an hour. I also liked 88 because that's the year I was born. So I always liked Back to the Future because I just knew that I was born in 1988, but it had no like significance. Like anybody's year, it means something to you, but it's just not significant to everybody else. So Back to the Future was one of the things that I could relate to. Like, oh, 88, that's the year I was born. I could always remember that. And I always thought that was pretty cool. That was a random number that the writers picked. I don't know why. Maybe that was the top speed of the car. I don't know. But yeah, they picked 88. Oh, I think not Robert Zemeckis. Who's the other guy? Robert Zemeckis. Well, I can't remember. Bob Gale? Maybe. Yeah, I think it's Bob Gale. Mentioned that I think his son was born in 1988. Oh, no, that's not true because they made the movies in 85. You know what? I don't know that fact. I don't know why they picked 88. Random number. Yeah, it wouldn't make sense because they made it in 85. Huh, that's interesting. Maybe I can get back to that. But, sorry guys, after this really emotional and kind of therapeutic movie review, I promise I will make movie reviews on the actual films themselves. This is not going to be the only one, but maybe I'll add snippets of this. But yeah, I could relate to Back to the Future because I think just like any kid growing up, you see certain things, dynamics in your family that you're like, oh, if, you know, my parents would have done this, or we could have done that, or if this wouldn't have happened, or if this would have happened, our lives would be different. And we always like to see life, what do they say? Life's always better on the other side. You know, grass is greener on the other side. You know, it's greener on the other side. We can't see it. We don't know. We just imagine. But Back to the Future was something that I really could relate to because I wanted to be like Marty. I wanted to get in a car, go back, and change some things in, you know, my family. You know, like Marty. Not only was he changing, you know, his father went from, you know, being kind of a coward, kind of a timid guy, to being able to stand up for himself. And doing that at a young age changed who he was. He was, you know, he had, not that it was easy, but he had that built into his character to where even things that were tough, he could stand up to them. And he went from being some kid that just wrote some science fiction stories in a cafeteria lunchroom to being an actual author and having his work published. That takes courage. You know, it's not just about the discipline. It's not just about the, what's that other word that everybody uses that I hate? Motivation. It's not that he was lacking motivation or discipline. Sometimes it's character that you're lacking. You're lacking the belief in yourself. Him standing up to Biff changed his life, changed his kid's life. Oh, that's cool. There's a plane right above me. Chemtrails. Let's see. Yeah, it changed not only his life, but his entire family's life. You know, he was a wealthier man. He was probably respected. You know, by doing that, changing their lives, Marty's mom didn't become an alcoholic. You know, his brother didn't work, you know, at a fast food joint. I always imagine he worked like at a Wiener Schnitzel or something like that. But yeah, Dave grew up to go to work in a suit. You know, we don't really know what it is, but he says he's, you know, he always wears a suit to the office. So he's got a better job. You know, he's not making minimum wage. He's doing well. He's respected. And, you know, his sister, she's still like his answering machine. But everyone seems to be doing better. Yeah, I can't say too much about the sister. Not that I know of. But yeah, you know, it also shows that there were consequences. You know, Marty changed things, and because of his getting that almanac, of course, he wanted to set his family up with money, dude. Gambling, make some bets, you know, win a couple bucks, like he tells Doc. And Doc sees the consequences of it. And the consequences are Biff went back, and he changed things for himself by using the almanac. He made himself very, very rich, very wealthy. And because of that, Marty's dad died, and Lorraine married Biff. And his brother is in jail. His sister's in massive credit card debt. And Marty's supposed to be going to like a military school. So yeah, like that's what I could relate to. Like, hey, if I can go back and change some things that I think would make our lives different or better, or you know, we all know what we're talking about in our families. You know, we all have that that thing that like, I don't know, I guess separates us but also defines us in our families. Like, a lot of us come from very toxic or negative environments. And yeah, that's what I always wish that I could do. Like Marty in Back to the Future. Get in a car and erase some things from the past, or change some things, or, you know, like in Jimmy Neutron. I remember Jimmy Neutron. Who used to watch Jimmy Neutron, Nickelodeon. There's an episode where his dad gets approached by this, you know, this guy's down on his luck. You know, he kind of like always has these ideas and nobody wants to listen to him. And he comes up to Jimmy's dad and Mr. Neutron. He's like, hey man, if you go in, you know, $50 or $100 or whatever, 15, whatever it was, he goes, you go 50-50 with me on this idea, man. Like, this is gonna take off. I think it was a burger joint or something like that. He's like, no, you know, this guy just randomly came up to him. You know, you're not gonna believe anybody like that. But turns out that this guy's idea, you know, it became, you know, a big franchise, you know, and I think it got to a point too where, like, when Jimmy was alive, like, these burgers were even, there's machines in your homes and everybody's homes that would make these burgers. So, like, it became a big conglomerate in their world. And you know, Jimmy creates like a time machine. He goes back. He goes, dude, if my dad, I think he wanted some new gadget or toys that's like, we don't have the money for it. And his dad mentions like, hey, you know, if I could have, you know, given this guy $50, we'd be millionaires. And Jimmy creates a time machine, and he goes back and he like makes his dad invest with this guy. You know, I think he like sends him a letter. It's like, hey man, we met on the street. Here's my name. Here's the $50 or whatever it is, and he invests in it. And when Jimmy goes back into the future, his dad's filthy rich, so he changed the past. You know, but then he realizes that his parents are so rich, they don't spend time with him. They're kind of like drones, kind of like in WALL-E, those people just sitting in those lounge chairs, just, you know, the machine, the chair, the recliner feeds them, gives them something to drink, and, you know, they don't move, they don't do anything. There's a screen in front of them. That's kind of like how his parents are. And he realizes, like, oh, being rich made my parents not care about me. And therefore, he chooses his previous life and goes back and changes it. Because for him, what was important was the money. If my dad was rich, I could have all the gadgets, I could fund all my experiments. But when he does, he realizes he loses something, the love of his parents. So he goes back and he fixes it. He wants to fix everything, and he'd rather be with his parents at work and him going to school, and, you know, them being, you know, regular middle class citizens. He'd rather take that life than the one he thought would make him happy. And, you know, again, if we go to the past and change things, and maybe our families would be different, and we'd actually miss the family that we have now. So yeah, that's something I'm thinking about. One, I'm home. Two, cool fact, I am sitting here, like I said, in Modesto, California. Those of you that know Modesto, shout out to Modesto 209. Back to the Future Part 3 was shot not too far from here in Sonora, California. I don't think I can see the mountains. Not from here. But about an hour and 15 minutes away. There's a town called Sonora. A lot of us know it because when it's wintertime and we want to go to the snow, we all go up towards Sonora. There's not a whole lot to do out here in Modesto. So a town that has snow, to us, we remember that town because that's pretty cool. So Sonora, all that Western stuff in Back to the Future 3 was shot not too far from here. So I think that's pretty cool. That's another reason why I like Back to the Future. And another like cool fun fact, at least for me on my end, I used to rent part 1 at a video store down the street all the time when I was a kid. I used to rent it out all the time. And then I saw part 2 for the first time on TV. This is when you would watch movies on TV at night after all the shows, after all the programs. They would show a 2-hour movie. It'd be an hour and a half, but there'd be like 30 minutes of commercials in between the movies, or in between the movie. Those of you that remember commercials, it was a time to get up, go pee, grab a snack, refill your water, do whatever. Commercial breaks were cool. Now you gotta sit through a whole 2-hour show with no break. Good old days. Yeah, I watched part 2 in my room on TV one night after we had a church service at home. I remember that, and I just remember sitting on my bed, and back in the day, people, before there was streaming, before there was DirecTV and TiVo, who remembers TiVo? You just had cable, you had TV, you had basic channels, and you would get a TV guide in the mail. You'd have to search through it to know what was going on. I didn't do that. I would just flip through channels. And sometimes you'd catch a movie and it'd be in the middle, it'd be at the end. Sometimes it would be years before you knew what the name of the movie was, because you would always watch the movie. You'd always start it from different points because there's no DVR. You couldn't start it from the beginning. Cable was ran by the cable company. So if the movie started at 5:30 and you started watching at 6:30, well, then you missed the first hour. So, yeah. I remember watching Back to the Future for the first time because when I watched it, I started watching it right from the beginning. I just so happened to just flip the channel. I always had my favorite channels. I flipped through my channels and I saw it, and it was, I remember smiling and knowing that it was the beginning because it was during the credit sequence of the movie. While they're already up in the clouds, and you see Michael J. Fox, his name, and Christopher Lloyd, and yep, I was like, yep, it's the beginning. And I remember just watching the whole thing. So I love part 2 for that reason. Look at that. I loved it because I finally got to watch it from the beginning. That was a luxury. That was beautiful. Now we watch movies whenever we want. But like I was saying, with the third one, it's the fact that I found out that they shot it not too far from here. So first one I loved because I would always rent it from the video store, and I'd go with my dad or my parents. If I got to choose them, I'd always go pick Back to the Future. Loved Back to the Future. And then part 2 was because, I caught it on TV from the beginning. I loved it, and it was cool. It was about the future. So that was pretty cool. Flying cars and all that. 8 years later, and we still don't have our flying cars. 2023, right? And part 3 because they shot it up near here in Sonora. So that was pretty cool. So I gravitated towards Back to the Future after a long 24-minute rant, and Murphy asleep. Where's Murphy? Yeah, he's over there sleeping. Tell me what films you gravitated towards as a kid. I was a Back to the Future kind of a kid. 90s kid. I didn't grow up in the 80s. I didn't watch them in theaters. But I was like the next generation that discovered them. If part 2 was made in 89, I think I came across it probably in 94, 93, somewhere around there. So it was already playing on TV, so that probably took about a year, maybe 2 years. I'd say about a year. Oh, I don't know. So yeah, it's definitely in the 90s. I was born in 88, so um, yeah. I didn't watch the vacation movies. I know there's multiple ones. I know there was a remake with like Ed Helms and Christina Applegate a few years ago. I've never seen it. One friend told me it was funny. I'm not gonna say who, but yeah, I want to revisit the National Lampoon vacation movies. I started the second one, the Europe one. And I couldn't get into it. The first one, um, again, didn't love it, but it was my first time really watching it. It was good. I liked it. I know why it's relatable. I'd want to revisit it. Um, haven't seen the other ones or the remake, but I see why people gravitated towards it. Hey, maybe there's people that went that traveled, from out here to LA. Maybe people did drive cross country or fly cross country with their families, and they could relate to it. It's funny. They're just things that happen along the way. Or maybe your dad or your mom doing something super cool, like standing up to somebody or the park and saying, you know what, traveled all this way, man, you can turn those rides on. Yeah, many different reasons. I just explained why I related to Back to the Future. So let me know what movies you gravitated towards. Even other movies, dude. Like, it wasn't just Back to the Future. That was super cool, but I love Van Damme movies growing up as a kid. I haven't seen them all, but there was a good handful that I used to watch over and over and over again as a kid. And there's especially one I used to always watch over and over and over again. Love Van Damme movies. Tell me what movies you guys loved growing up as kids and why. Maybe it was something, I have a friend that loves the Big Lebowski. I know it's not for everybody. Trust me, I know some really cool cinephiles and that I've gone to school with, that I've worked with. We have some really cool, really good conversations about film, movies, you name it, directing. Like, this friend of mine, he's schooled me on some stuff, and he's introduced me to some really, really good filmmakers that now I consider some of my favorite. So, his opinion, to me, when he says something, I listen. Even if I don't agree with it, I'm like, let me listen to what he's got to say. Very smart dude. When it comes to this, doesn't get the Big Lebowski. Doesn't get it. It's not for him. It's not his cup of tea. Nothing wrong with that. I know, speaking with him many times, he respects the Coens. It's just not his cup of tea, all right? Raised in Arizona. People swear by it. One of the greatest movies ever. One of the greatest comedies ever. Nicolas Cage in that movie is the best he's ever been. Better than Face Off. Same. I didn't get it at first. It's grown on me, but I didn't grow up with it. But going back to my friend, he loves The Big Lebowski because him and his brother used to watch it, and also he used to watch it, the TV version. So they used to quote it, and when they actually watched it, DVD or Blu-ray, or they realized some of the lines were changed. So on TV, when there was rated R movies or movies with language, they'd cut some scenes out. Sometimes on TV, when people would cuss, they'd change the words. Like, instead of "F you, man," it'd be like "Forget you, man." And you could hear the voice change, the voice actor change, just for that small bit, that line. So my friend and his brother relate to The Big Lebowski because they used to watch it together. They used to watch movies together. I used to always watch movies by myself. So they love that movie. It's nostalgic. There's a lot of movies that I love that, as a filmmaker, as someone that loves film, there's movies that I watch that I love because I watched them as a kid, or because I remember watching them in the theater, or for whatever reason, they mean something to me. They matter. Murph's following me. He's been following me. Hey, buddy. Yeah, these movies matter, but they're terrible. They're horrible. They're not great. Most people would disagree with you, but it's nostalgic. So that's what I'm asking for. Reach out to me, write in the comments, shoot me a message, shoot me a video. Do something like this. I'm going on 30 minutes. I don't know if I'm gonna post this whole thing raw. They're gonna go, I don't care. Yeah, it's not edited beautifully. Yeah, the sun's, you can't see me, but that's just what I'm doing. I'm in my parents' backyard walking back and forth. My dog's following me. He just woke up. Just tell me, shoot a video, write to me, comment a movie that's nostalgic for you and why. Maybe think